මාම කැච්චක් හොඳමයි. මේ ඇත්තා කතා දමන්නේ ආදිවාසී භාෂාව ගැන. What I just spoke is the oldest language in Sri Lanka. It's not Tamil, it's not Sinhalese. In fact, it's a language much older than both those languages. The language I'm speaking is the Wanniyala Aetto language. And it's at least 50,000 years old. Now, we often know that languages like Sinhalese come from Pali or Sanskrit. The indigenous language of Sri Lanka, the Wanniyala Aetto's language, is actually so old that it has no root language. That is, there is no language from which it descends. It's that old. Now, being an ancient language, it's actually not a written language, it is a spoken language. That is, that it exists in its oral form only. And this isn't entirely uncommon for indigenous languages. A lot of indigenous languages around the world aren't actually written, like the hundreds of indigenous languages here in Australia. Now, because it isn't a written language, learning it is actually quite challenging. There are a few written resources about the language, mostly done by scientists and linguists. But for the most part, you've got to listen and learn the language in an oral sense. I've actually been learning this language for the past couple of years, and while I can't say I'm entirely fluent, I've actually gained a certain degree of proficiency, and I'd love to share those proficiencies with you. And whilst there are lots of different types of dialects, I'm mostly familiar with the Dambana dialect, spoken by the community around Dambana and also by who is often regarded as a famous indigenous leader, Wanniyala Aetto. So there's an important rule in the indigenous language of Sri Lanka, and it's that living objects are referred to with the suffix of Aetto, and non-living objects are known as Podja. So, for example, a person would be an Atta, whereas a pencil would be called an Ulpodja. So, let's play around with some examples of words, right? Let's start with some words for common objects that we have, like a light bulb, right? A light bulb is known as an Elipodja labachana yamake, and a yamake is anything that is technological. Elipodja refers to the fact that light emanates out of it. Another object can be a building. Let's take a school, right? A school is known as Karakurugana Rukampodja. Karakuru, because that's the sound a pencil makes when scraping against paper, right? A lot of indigenous languages are designed around the concept that new ideas are incorporated into sensory words, like the sound it makes. So, for example, a motorcycle in the indigenous language is Hutu Hutu Gana Dandu Catcha. So, what about animal names? Now, this indigenous language of ours in Sri Lanka really comes alive when referring to natural phenomena, or as we say in Sinhala, Sobadharma, right? Sobadharma adahas lassantama prakasha karanna puluwan wenne Adivasi bhasawen. So, here are some common animals. We would say Alia in Sinhalese, and Alia would be Hotakandala Aetta. Hotakandala Aetta refers to the fact that the elephant's nose is perceived to look like the top of a mountain, the way it curves gently inwards. A leopard, we say Divya in Sinhalese. In the indigenous language, it's Pollejalatta. Another example would be a dog. We say Balla. The indigenous language refers to dogs as Kukkilatta. A rabbit, Hava, is known as a Bokki, Bokkilatta. A grey langur, those big grey monkeys that are often found in Sri Lanka, they are known as Udakelinyalatta. Udakelinyalatta because they sit up straight on the top of tree crowns. Udakelinyalatta. A lot of indigenous words describe objects based on their physical characteristics. What about body parts? Kalava refers to one's thighs. Itsedja refers to your head. Eye is referred to in the indigenous language as an ahirukula, the house of the eye, once translated literally into Sinhalese. What about activities? The word to eat is kavillana. Kavillana tamandu karanna means to obtain something to eat. To walk would be tumangachanna. The activity is paired up with its context to give you an idea of what the activity is. Now that you've gotten an idea for this beautiful language, let's put all of this together and create a sentence. Let's say that you're walking into a forest and you see a big elephant. How you would say that in English is, I walked into the forest and saw a big elephant. In Sinhalese, it would be Mang Kalave Avididdi, Mang Loku Aliyek Dakka. However, in the indigenous language, it becomes this beautiful sentence. Me atta kalapojje mangachana kalamache. Me attage ahirukule lokutane botakandalatte manduna. And when translated directly into Sinhalese, what that refers to is that when this being walked through the forest, a large elephant manifested in this being's eye. And it's a much more poetic way of describing natural phenomena. I've been learning this language for the past 2.5 to 3 years. I have to say that it's a beautiful language and it's one of the more neglected languages of Sri Lanka. A lot of my learning came from watching videos online, and a really, really valuable resource for this sort of work is the brilliant channel by Chatura Ramesh and Dambane Vimalaratna, who are indigenous individuals in the Dambane community. The channel's name is Vadirata, and I would encourage all of you to go onto that channel, subscribe, like, and watch as many of those videos as you can, because this language is precious. And the more of us that understand it, the better it will be for archaeologists and linguists in terms of preserving this language. In addition to this, I would recommend you to find many videos on YouTube about the indigenous community, and also to read any scientific articles which are often available online. Thank you for listening.